Somewhere in the interior of Ghana, past the dusty highways of the northern region, past the market towns and the wide, slow-moving rivers, something is about to happen that has not happened in over half a century. A drill is going into the ground. Not offshore. Not in the familiar deep waters of the Gulf of Guinea where Ghana made its name as an oil producer. This time onshore. In the heart of the country. In a vast, flat, ancient sedimentary basin that has been studied, mapped, theorized about, and never commercially drilled, for more than 50 years. This is the story of the Voltaian Basin. What it is, why it matters, what Ghana hopes to find there, and what the rest of Africa is watching for. Before we begin, kindly subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. To understand what is happening, you have to understand the geography. The Voltaian Basin is enormous. It covers roughly 103,600 to 115,000 square kilometers, that is approximately 40% of Ghana's entire land area. It sprawls across the central and northern parts of the country, a flat-lying inland sedimentary basin sitting atop the West African craton, some of the oldest stable geological crust on the planet. The rocks here are ancient by any measure. Geologists classify the basin as Neo-Proterozoic to early Paleozoic, meaning the sediments were laid down somewhere between 600 million and 1,000 million years ago. To put that in perspective, these rocks were forming when the first complex multicellular life was only just beginning to appear on Earth. Long before fish. Long before dinosaurs. Long before anything we would recognize as life walked or swam or breathed. The basin began accumulating sediments along the margin of an ancient inland sea. Over hundreds of millions of years, layers of sandstones, shales, carbonates, and mudstones built up, in some places reaching a thickness of 5 to 6 kilometers. These sedimentary sequences contain the two key ingredients that petroleum geologists look for: source rocks capable of generating hydrocarbons and reservoir rocks with the porosity to hold them. Geochemical studies have found black shales in the Odi-Penjari and Kwahu groups of the basin, organic-rich formations that in similar basins elsewhere in the world have proven to be active petroleum systems. Researchers have drawn comparisons to the Alizé Basin in Algeria, the Tawdini Basin across Mali and Mauritania, and the Amadeus Basin of Central Australia, all Neo-Proterozoic basins of similar age and character, all of which have produced commercially significant quantities of oil and gas. The analogy is imperfect, as geological analogies always are. But it is not unreasonable. And in the world of frontier exploration, not unreasonable is enough to drill. Ghana has known about the Voltaian Basin for a long time. The question has always been whether there is actually commercial oil and gas there, and whether anyone is prepared to spend the money to find out. The last time an exploration well was drilled in this basin was 1974. That single well, the Premuasi one, was completed in 1977 and returned disappointing results. Poor petroleum indicators that effectively froze serious exploration interest for decades. In the decades that followed, attention shifted to Ghana's offshore, where in 2007 the Jubilee Field discovery changed everything. Jubilee was a world-class find. Estimates put recoverable reserves at around 600 million barrels of oil. Production began in 2010, transforming Ghana into one of sub-Saharan Africa's most significant oil producers virtually overnight. The 10 fields followed, Tweneboa-Enyenra-Ntomme, adding to the offshore resource base. Today, Ghana's Jubilee and 10 fields together hold an estimated 640 million barrels of oil and 1.2 trillion cubic feet of gas still in place. But offshore production is declining. Ghana's oil output has been falling year on year as mature fields age and new deepwater discoveries prove costly and slow to develop. For a government dealing with fiscal pressures, the math is uncomfortable. So attention has turned inland. Back to the Voltaian. Back to the basin that has waited, largely untouched, for 50 years. The interest was revived in part by an unexpected discovery. Soviet and Romanian geologists, drilling for water in the northern regions of Ghana in the decades after independence, encountered traces of oil and gas in some of their boreholes. It was not a formal petroleum survey. It was a search for groundwater. But those traces were noted, filed away, and never forgotten. On the 4th of March 2026, just days ago, a formal contract was signed at the headquarters of GNPC Explorco in Accra. The agreement brought together three parties: Explorco, the upstream exploration subsidiary of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation; LubriMax Ghana Limited, a local petroleum services provider; and Well Engineers and Planners, their technical partner. The contract is for project management consultancy services, the specialized planning and coordination work that precedes and governs an onshore drilling campaign. Under the agreement, LubriMax and well engineers and planners will oversee the entire first phase of drilling operations in the Voltaian Basin. Speaking at the signing ceremony, the managing director of Explorco, Samuel Opoku Arthur, confirmed the target. Spudding, the industry term for breaking ground on a well, is scheduled for the third quarter of 2026. He made a particular point of emphasizing skills transfer. Ghanaian engineers are expected to lead subsequent phases of the program. This is not a foreign company leading a foreign operation in a Ghanaian field. This is Ghana's National Petroleum Corporation, backed by Ghanaian technical partners, drilling in Ghana's interior, building the expertise to do it again themselves. The announcement comes against a backdrop of Ghana's broader upstream investment push. At the Invest in African Energies briefing in Accra in April 2025, Explorco's then managing director Michael Ariidi described the initiative plainly. This is historical because no exploration well has been drilled in the Voltaian Basin since 1974. He called for credible international partners to join the effort, noting that the basin's scale demands collaboration beyond what any single national company can provide alone. Ghana's Deputy Minister of Energy and Green Transition, Richard Ganmensa, added a message aimed squarely at investors. Ghana is open for business. It would be incomplete to tell this story without also telling the part that is harder to hear. Civil society groups in Ghana have not greeted the announcement with unqualified enthusiasm. The Africa Center for Energy Policy, known as ACEP, has pointed out that GNPC has already spent over $120 million on the Voltaian Basin over the years, with no discovery to show for it. They note that the timeline for drilling has shifted repeatedly. Originally announced for 2025, then pushed to the first quarter of 2026, now set for the third quarter of 2026. The Africa Sustainable Energy Center has been equally measured in its assessment. Even if drilling begins on schedule and goes well, they argue that commercial production from the Voltaian Basin cannot realistically begin before 2033 at the earliest, more likely 2036. That is not a reason not to drill. But it is a reason to be clear-eyed about what this is. A long-term strategic investment, not a near-term solution to revenue pressure. There are also genuine geological uncertainties. The Premuasi, one well in 1977 was discouraging. Geochemical studies show that organic matter preservation in parts of the basin was limited by oxic conditions, meaning some of the shale formations may not have retained sufficient hydrocarbons to be commercially viable. The basin remains, in the words of researchers at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, largely an enigma. These are not trivial concerns. But they are the normal conditions of frontier exploration. Every major producing basin in the world was once an enigma. The Jubilee Field itself was considered a frontier play before the discovery well confirmed the resource. What Ghana is doing in the Voltaian Basin is not guaranteed to succeed. No exploration campaign comes with guarantees. But it is methodical, it is nationally led, and it is historically significant. For the first time since 1974, a drill will penetrate the ancient sediments of Ghana's interior. For the first time, the country will gather real subsurface data, not seismic estimates, not geochemical analogies, but actual core samples and formation pressures from depth. Whatever the well finds, it will answer questions that have remained open for half a century. If the results are encouraging, even modestly so, they could unlock one of the most significant onshore exploration campaigns in West African history. A basin covering 40% of Ghana's landmass, with geological similarities to productive basins across North Africa and the Middle East, would attract international capital quickly. If the results are disappointing, Ghana will have spent money and gained knowledge, and the northern interior will return to its quiet. The basin will remain. The question will simply be deferred again. But the drill is going in. After 50 years of study, of speculation, of seismic surveys and geochemical sampling in academic papers, the drill is going in. That, in the measured language of petroleum geology, is what they call breaking new ground.